Hi guys, and welcome to the Lifestyle Design Secrets podcast, where we talk about fitness, nutrition, mindset, and a whole lot more. Thank you for everyone who's listened to all our episodes so far and taken the time to leave a review. If you do enjoy this episode and want the free content to keep on coming, please do take 2 seconds to leave us a 5-star review. Thanks again. Now let's dive in. Hi guys, and welcome back to the podcast. I am really excited about today's episode, mainly just to catch up with our guest, who is Megan Duncan. Hello. For anyone watching the video, she was giving you a little wave. So I'm really excited to have Megan on the podcast, mostly for selfish reasons, because I'm really excited to catch up with her and hear about everything she's been doing. So to give you a little bit of background, Megan and I used to work together. Our nicknames were Barbie and Vegan, which is something else that we definitely need to cover up as well. Your journey from vegan to dating a hunter, which I can't wait to get into. And so when we used to work together, we used to be the marketing team at Touch of Spice, which is a luxury kind of villa and travel company in Queenstown. And I used to go to the gym every day at F45, and I'd be sat there like with my boiled eggs and my chicken salad, and Megan used to look at me like I was just a total weirdo. I was such an oddball. And now Megan is competing in bodybuilding, and I'm going to probably get all the words wrong. But what's it called? ICN New Zealand?
ICN New Zealand. So it stands for I Compete Natural. So it's a completely natural federation. So they drug test throughout the year.
Yeah.
And they spot drug test on the day. So completely natural. And they've only been
not pumping your body full of steroids.
No. So everybody who's on stage and you're standing beside on stage are natural athletes.
Amazing. So what we're going to do today, guys, is run through a little introduction to Megan and her health journey so far. Mm-hmm. Her why she got into bodybuilding, and a few other thoughts. Then we're going to run through the main course, my kind of lifestyle design secrets that I run through with most people as part of my program, and get Megan's take on them from a bodybuilding perspective, which I'm really excited about. Knowing us, will go off on tons of tangents, which is why I thought we should give ourselves a little bit of structure today. And then for your takeaway dessert, Megan is going to give us a couple of tips on what aspects of bodybuilding she reckons we can take into daily life, because there's definitely quite a few bodybuilding hacks, I would say, that I use, very amateur ones. Right, so Megan, tell us a little bit about you. Where are you from and what brought you to where you are today?
So I am originally from Scotland, and I've been calling Queenstown home for about 5 years now. So yeah, I met you maybe 4 years ago now, I think.
I think we arrived within weeks of each other.
Yeah.
Or close to it. Yeah, 4.5 years.
Yeah, about 4.5 years now, which is crazy. And yeah, so I wouldn't say I was ever the healthiest person. I'd been on sort of ups and downs on sort of health journeys, and some of them weren't the healthiest in the past, and living in Queenstown was definitely a struggle because it's full of pubs and you just want to be out partying, and Ferg burgers here, and definitely wasn't the healthiest of time in my life. And then
that's a really interesting point that you mentioned that, because every single one of my guests so far, I would say, or close to it, has mentioned a shift in environment as like throwing their health journey off in some way, shape or form.
It felt like life just went into a washing machine, and it was just spinning and rinsing and repeating, but of the wrong habits.
Yes.
It's kind of really where I was at. Yeah. And then I set myself a bit of a challenge. I was 29, and I decided I wanted to be the fittest I've ever been by the time I turned 30. and that was my goal. So I started off with my first PT, and saw massive changes so quickly.
Yeah.
But the diet side of it, so I was vegan, and I wasn't really understanding what my body needed, the fuel that it needed. So
Yeah.
I was just continuing on my vegan diet and not really thinking about the proteins and the carbs and the fats and how they balance out. I was just eating my normal, what I thought was healthy vegan diet.
And what drew you to veganism in the first place? And what were you eating? Do you remember?
I'd been vegetarian for about 8 years before
Yeah.
going vegan. And it was more, I always felt like I didn't feel like I needed meat. And so I didn't really want to contribute to the meat industry
It was
because
a
I
kind
did,
of an environmental factor at the time, wasn't
yeah.
it?
And I kind
Yeah.
of had this thing, which is funny now, that if I'm not willing to kill it, catch it and kill it, then I shouldn't eat it. And
Yeah.
so, because I didn't want to shop in a supermarket with meat. So that's kind of where it started. And then I dabbled with being a bit vegan in Australia. I was in a very hippie phase of my life at that point as well.
It
Um,
does crack me up because you were such a hippie, like in the
I know,
best way, and now you're like standing on stage covered in fake tan and a sparkly
I
bikini.
know. You'd never
We'll
think
get
I
some
had.
photos of
You'd
people.
never think I had a dreadlock back in the day as well.
You
Yeah,
had dreadlocks?
yeah.
Did not know
Only a couple at the back. Yeah, it was a weird time in my life.
that.
Yeah. So then, yeah, and then when I was, so mostly what I was eating was like only when I started with this PT did I start actually introducing tofu and tempeh and things like that to my diet.
Which are like
Bef-
veggie and vegan protein sources.
yeah,
Yeah.
before that I was predominantly just on vegetables and
Mm.
fats, carbs, and nuts as a source of protein. Um, I didn't really like the idea of buying like the kind of manufactured um
Meats.
processed stuff.
Mm.
So I didn't really bother with that. Then when I started training with this PT, they were like, you really have to up your protein intake. So started working on that. And then fast forward a few months and it hit my 30th birthday and I think by that point I'd maybe lost like 10 kg. So I
My
dropped a lot of
goodness.
weight.
Mm.
And insanely noticeable difference, but I didn't have much shape, I don't think. Like I just kind of lost it from everywhere, but looked kind of
Yeah.
flat.
Mhm.
Um,
That's
and
you,
then
you and me both. That's the first thing I did. I was like, oh, like kind of figured how to eat, but wasn't really lifting much heavy stuff. And I
yeah,
was like, yay, I'm 58 kilos and I look emaciated, which
and it
in London,
was.
which was so trendy.
It
It's like,
became
this is wonderful.
it became so much about the clothes size I was buying and the number on the scales.
Yeah.
But I still didn't feel I was happy, but I still felt like there was more that had to be done.
Mhm.
And at that point, my best friend, Jade, who you know,
Oh, yeah.
um, was training for a bikini bodybuilding
I
competition.
forgot that she did it first because now
And
you've both done a few.
yeah, so then I was thinking, oh, this could be kind of fun. And I went to see her first show and it was amazing. And like, I used to be a dancer back in the day. So
Yeah.
I was used to being on stage and kind of loved the glam side of it and
Yeah.
could see myself potentially doing something like that. Um, and so that's kind of how it first got introduced to my life was by Jade doing it, which is something she wanted to do for years and she'd always kind of spoke about it. And she
Yeah.
finally took the leap and did it. And I kind of, yeah, got introduced via her
Yeah.
journey. Um, and then I ended up joining the same PT that she had, which
So you
wasn't the
just
best fit.
quickly, so yeah, so PTs and coaches, which are obviously
Mm-hmm.
crucial to what you do. You've been
Mm-hmm.
through a few different ones now, haven't you?
Yeah. So I was with one when I was just kind of at the end of a my weight loss initial weight loss journey. I started with Jade's first PT, and to get more of an idea of like the food plan and things like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really a good fit. Like I didn't feel like we understood each other.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was coming from a vegan perspective, and their answer
So your
was
first two bodybuilding shows were as a vegan,
vegan. Yeah.
weren't they? Yeah.
So even before I'd started training for the show, this coach's attitude was, it's just easier if you can just eat fish. And I'm like, well, I actually have a seafood allergy, so that's not going to happen.
Really not.
And her answer was just eat fish. And there was no understanding of like me and how I fit into that journey. For me, it was like I had to fit the mold of what she did.
Yeah.
So that didn't really last very long. And then I
Well,
started
why
making
was she
my,
recommending you fish, do you know? Like the amino acid, like the range of, were you not getting enough?
there was no explanation on that. It was
Didn't.
just
Okay.
he didn't work with vegans. And so the only way she knew how to work was with meat and fish. And that it didn't, yeah, I don't think that there was the best sort of understanding there from either
Yeah.
side. So, and then I started working with a different coach, and he'd, again, we were just kind of continuing on this weight loss journey and trying to build some muscle. And then I eventually decided that I was going to jump in and commit to a show after
Yeah.
um, a bit of a, let's just say, a blip in the love life.
Like a health blip or like,
Um, Someone who I guess so an ex,
was that
someone who
say
I
a
was seeing.
breakup blip?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just there was a lot of toxic energy and things in my life at that time that came from that side. And
Yeah.
I just kind of had enough of it. And so I decided to have this full empowerment moment when I was like, I need to do something for me that is solely for me, and really kind of put as much energy into working out the best version of myself for me. And so
Yeah.
that was kind of I was already thinking about it. And then this person exited
Just
my life, thank God.
sounds like an
And
absolute blessing in disguise.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then I kind of actually, honestly, drunkenly went out and bought a pair of show heels on my phone. And that was it.
That's the best part. You have to keep that going.
I was committed. So I went out for a few margaritas and bought some show heels, and then
Next thing you know.
I was doing it.
And how much of a game changer was that commitment? The
Massive.
accountability. Once you've signed
Yeah.
up, you're
Once
in.
I'd bought the shoes, and then kind of told people like that, even that night, I was like, I've just bought shoes, and I was out with Jade, and so she'd done her show and she was getting ready to do another one. So we were talking about it and met lots of people out that night, and we were talking about, yep, I'm going to do this. And so once it was out there, I am the kind of person that once I commit to something, that's it. Like
Yeah.
I need to see it through.
And you've
Um,
also, you gave yourself accountability from all angles, right? So you
yeah,
started talking to people about it, you invested, like
yeah,
physically. That's what I always say to people. Like, lots of people listen to the podcast and they love my free articles and stuff. But the difference, people who actually lose lots of weight or like
mm,
change their lifestyles when they invest in a plan, because that makes a massive
yeah,
difference, if that makes
and
sense. And once you've like, and even like committing to everything that you have to
yeah,
on your bodybuilding journey, it's like a
it's
massive investment in time
it
and
is
all sorts.
not a cheap sport
No.
in the slightest. Like, and I was shocked at the reality of it as well, like how much you can. I definitely feel in my second year this year, I have been able to be smarter in what I can do myself and what's actually needed. Whereas in the
Yeah.
first year, I was so lost. So a coach would tell me to buy something, and I was like, okay, like just going left, right, and center. But in reality, a lot of those things I didn't actually need because I could be getting it from food if we just ate smarter, and there was a lot of that. Um,
So you've learned
but
a lot about that along the way.
Yeah, and I think the difference between doing it vegan and now I am a meat eater, is
Can't wait to get to
massive.
that part.
Yeah. So
Has
the
it been a
first,
massive difference?
yeah, massively. And I think the first prep for me, so going to my first show, um, was terrifying.
I can
um,
imagine.
and so Jade had done a show already, and then my other best friend, Kareen, I actually met her through Jade doing the bodybuilding.
Gibson
Um,
Tavern
yes,
lady?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's okay. Just keep talking. I can still hear you. Oh, yeah. 1 second, Megan. I'm just going to pause the recording for 2 ticks. It says you need to refresh your browser. Love a technical issue. Hi guys, I'm just trying to get Megan back online. So I'm going to keep recording and having a chat to you. We'll see how she gets on. Cannot wait to talk to Megan about her journey from being a vegan to a meat eater because I think that's really, really interesting.
back.
Hello, you're back. Amazing.
I don't know what happened.
I was just chit-chatting by myself for a minute. Cool.
Oh.
Yeah. So where were we?
So yeah, I'd hit my first show, done it vegan. I was so stoked with what I took on the day. And I think the big thing with bodybuilding is ultimately everybody wants to go and win, or it's the same for any
Yeah.
competition. But I feel like it's such a process, and you put so much time, energy, commitment. You give up so much of normal life
Yeah.
to kind of be part of the process. So there's this attitude on the day as well, I feel, where you're already kind of winning just getting to stage.
Oh, just
Like,
by turning up and like everything you've
yeah.
achieved by the point that you get there.
And I remember everyone telling me, honestly, just by turning up, you'll feel like you're winning. And I remember thinking,
Cringe.
no, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And then it did. Like, on the day, you just feel like it's such a buzz. Like, I've never had anything like it. And ICN, I feel, they're the only federation I've ever went with. But they're such a friendly federation.
Yeah.
Like, the president of the federation will message you on Instagram directly. You can reach out with questions. It felt like there was such a community,
Yeah.
um, which was a big part of it. And I think a lot of people think of it as a sport where, like, it's just vain and
They,
people are just
yeah.
pageants and
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But then when you're actually backstage, it's so chilled, it's so mellow. Everybody's just hanging out and
Yeah.
bigging each other up. And there is that level of competition, but you're also just proud to be there with everybody else.
Yeah. You've all been on a similar
So,
journey.
yeah. And so that was a big part of that first show, was really an amazing way to get into it and meet other people who were in the sport.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, fast forward, I actually left the coach that I was with for the first show and started with another coach. So I felt like
I remember
the
you
when the
being, don't
first
hold
one.
back as well. Be, if you're happy
Okay.
to, be open because I remember bumping into you after you ditched that first coach and had the second one, and you were like, holy shit, what was I doing?
Yeah. So the first one, he basically ended up on the news for just being a drunken idiot. And I didn't want to stand on stage at nationals and be associated with the kind of behavior that he was putting out there. So I
Yeah,
just
that's
felt like it
really
wasn't a
interesting.
brand that I wanted to be a part of.
Yeah.
Um, and I do think it made a difference going from a male coach, and then my next coach was a female coach.
Yeah.
And she only works with females. So the whole energy change was massive. And kind of understanding hormones, or maybe it just being able to be more vulnerable with your coach and
Yeah.
like feel like there was a safe space to open up. And she had a really great team, and we used to do weekly Zoom calls with other girls on the team so that you could talk about how you were feeling and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it felt like there was way more sort of emotional support there.
Yeah.
um but again, I was still on a vegan diet, and although I was getting more food through this coach, I was on struggle street for a long time.
I'm
Um,
just gonna take us on a wee side note. Do your
mm,
energy levels and by default possibly your hormones feel different now that you're eating meat? Do you reckon?
energy energy levels massively.
Okay.
Um, I think, and with the energy comes so much more. So last year, I remember just feeling fatigued for months on end, like no amount of sleep, and it was almost, you were so fatigued that my sleep was terrible as well. Like I couldn't have a good
Overtired?
night's sleep. Yeah,
Yeah.
permanently. And I think as well at that point, I was taking it too serious. I was
Ah, okay.
too tunnel vision in the whole process. And it did kind of massively affect a lot of relationships with people in my life, which was probably the hardest part of the whole journey, was talking to family back home, and they're just concerned because you look real small and skinny, and are you doing this healthy? And I was just so like, tunnel vision, I'm fine. Like,
Yeah.
don't tell me how I feel. But deep down, and in hindsight, which is an amazing thing, I was miserable, and I can 100% see why they were concerned.
Yeah.
And it massively affects your relationship with your friends as well, because you can't drink. So I think last year I was sober for about 8 months.
Yeah.
So you can't drink, you can't eat, you can't really go to dinner parties or anything. You
This,
can go out on a night out and just be sober, which is fine, and people do that. And
but you have to have the
but it's
energy to do that. And it's sometimes
yes,
not as appealing if you have to get up
I,
and go to the gym the next morning.
yeah. So
Yeah.
then it becomes, what are you choosing? Where are you going to distribute your energy levels?
Yeah.
And I'm investing a lot into this, so that's where the energy has to go. So, and I think a lot of my friends last year didn't understand the process
Yeah.
and didn't really get it, and didn't really see eye to eye on like why you would want to do it.
Yeah.
And I really struggled with that. I really struggled with that feeling of not being
Seen
kind
or
of really actually
understood.
having, yeah, and really having people's support.
Yeah.
Um, so that was a really tricky time to kind of mentally balance all of that pressure of sacrifice of everything you're giving up for something very selfish.
Yeah.
And but it was good for me. Like I was wanting to do it, and I was driven to do it.
And in
And so it
hindsight now, when you are looking after yourself and you're doing something for you, do you reckon that
mm,
makes you turn up as a better partner now and
yeah,
friend?
I think now in hindsight, this year I'd say this year's probably been one of the happiest years of my life. Like I so many great things have happened,
Yeah.
and I do think that that is something that I would put down to being on prep and on that kind of journey as well,
Yeah.
because it kind of forces you to put yourself so far out your comfort zone, to challenge yourself, and to look to other aspects of your life where you could also be striving for more, or where can I challenge myself professionally, or and so many other things. So it did change a lot of that. And then I feel like I've went into this year with hindsight and being able to kind of correct where I was unhappy last year.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And can I just have a redo?
And this is what I find so interesting as well, because people see the like fake tans and the bikinis and like you being on stage,
Mm.
and they probably think that you've been eating chicken and broccoli for like 6 months, but they probably don't understand like all the mindset shifts and the learning process and
Mm.
journey that you go on, which I think is
Yeah, it's
amazing.
massive.
Yeah.
Because I part of it as well. So after I'd finished my show last year, I was like feeling the best I've ever felt in myself at that point. And I
But
was
your
like,
best
man,
just
I'm
keeps getting
single.
better, doesn't it?
But I was like, I'm single. And if I do prep again, I'm going to be single forever because who is
How
going
are
to
you
date
going to meet
someone
someone?
who can't eat and drink? How are you going to, like, there's only so much coffee you can
I
drink.
can't
And
wait to
like,
get into the environment part of this and like how you tackle the environment around you. So, because I love topics on this podcast, how did you meet Tom? And is he part of the reason that vegan Duncan really enjoyed the lamb koftas at my wedding?
yeah, pretty much. So we met, I was actually up Cadrona ski field with a friend, probably around about this time last year. And I'd had enough of snowboarding for the day. I was like, I'm done.
We
I
all
just
know
want to
that feeling.
chill
Yeah.
and hang out. And my friend, he wanted to keep on going. So I went back to the base building, sitting by myself, and I thought, there's some babes up on the mountain. Let's see who's on Bumble. So here's me sitting at the base building, just swiping away.
Yeah.
And anyway, and then it must have been I got home that night and had matched with Tom. And so we started chatting then. So he's based in Wanaka.
Yeah.
So he always thanked my friend Clem, who I was up the mountain with, because if we weren't up the mountain, we probably would never have matched because we wouldn't have been in the distance.
Yeah. Oh my God, modern dating and
I
the
know.
intricacies.
Yeah. So yeah, we
It's
and then
mental.
that yeah, so we met. We were one of those online Bumble loves, you know.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah, and then
I was so
as well,
excited when you started telling me about Tom though, because he sounds amazing.
he is. He's a good egg.
Good
I find a
egg,
good.
supportive. How different has it
Yeah,
been having like a supportive partner?
insane.
Yeah.
And I think as well, like, so yeah, the back, or you said it at the start. So Tom is a hunter, so
Yeah.
he's a hunting guide. So when we first started seeing each
You
other,
were
all
still
my friends
vegan?
were like, "The vegan is dating a hunter." Like, what the hell? And I remember telling my dad, and he was just thinking of this big Kiwi man with like big grey straggly beard and I don't know, like fishing rod over his shoulder. And I was like, definitely not. So I was still vegan when we started dating. And then we went out. It was one of our first dates. And I remember we sat down at dinner and I was talking about, do I compete again? I don't know. Um, and I'd had a good experience with the female coach I was with.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't fully feel like I enjoyed all of that process
Yeah.
with her. There was something I felt like I just needed again more of a mindful approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided at that point if I was going to compete, then I would do it eating meat because part of me was wanting to see the difference and kind of like and experiment with myself how far I can push myself. I feel like I pushed myself as far as I could on a vegan diet with what I was doing.
I might have to pause you
And
there
then I
and say
wanted,
that how incredible you looked for your first show. I was like, shit, I wish she'd eat some meat because I would
yeah,
love to see what you could do with, like, yeah, I guess more of a range of protein available to you. Yeah, so that's,
yeah.
yeah,
So I think that was the thing I wanted to see. If I was going to do it again, I was going to fully commit and just do it to the best of my ability with the right coach and the right foods.
yeah,
And so then when I was having this conversation with Tom, obviously he's a venison hunter, so there was a unlimited supply of deer. Um,
Lean too, venison.
yeah.
Super lean.
So yeah, and so that was kind of it. And he'd always said from the get go, and I tried to pre-warn him, like,
About bodybuilding
okay,
prep and what it means.
like I'm not going to be a lot of fun. I'm not going to be able to drink. We won't be able to do all this like cool stuff that we love doing. And his response the whole time was just, as long as you're happy, I'm happy. And as long as you do as long as you like are healthy and doing what you want to do, then I completely back you in whatever you're doing. So there was never any question from his side.
That is amazing.
And I'd always say it to him. Are you sure? Like,
Yeah.
are you before we get too deep into prep? Are you sure you want to like?
Yeah.
And I was almost like not pushing him away, but just reiterating that it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
And his answer was the same every time. If you're asking if I'm in, I'm in, and that was it.
That's
so
good.
Yeah. And then the next thing was finding a new coach. So I went back to a different male coach.
Yeah.
But he has a master's in, he's a dietitian.
Oh yeah.
So PhD in that first.
Yeah.
And then is an ICN bodybuilding pro. So I liked.
Yeah.
So he's got his pro card.
That's
which
amazing because I
isn't
think
professional.
so many people, when they get into bodybuilding coaching, have been a PT or competed themselves and like fumbled through and been like, oh, I'm going to do coaching, just from some of the shocking stories I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to change it in a way that, so I'm changing my diet massively, and I want to learn from, I actually want to learn from someone, like,
Yeah.
what should I be eating and the mindset that goes with it.
So I'm going to drag us into main course, Megan, because otherwise we're just going to keep chatting around.
I know, we're here forever.
We're going to cover mindset, how you handle your environment, habits, movement, so your workouts, and nutrition, which I'm so excited to get into. So with this new coach, what were the kind of, or in general, how important has mindset been to you? And has it been different this time?
Mindset is everything.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely everything.
And you said, so when you first started your health journey, when you decided to sign up with a PT, when you were 29, you know the statistics for people who run marathons with the age ending in 9?
No.
Because everyone freaks out before big birthdays. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It was mental.
Yeah. I think so he has a very mindful approach to everything, I think. And so, and the key thing he always says to me is it is about progression over perfection.
Yeah.
Because perfection will never be reached, and anytime you think you're getting close to it, the goalpost is going to move.
Oh, it's not a destination.
No. So as long as you're seeing progress weekly, or you're feeling progress daily, then you are winning at whatever you're setting yourself to.
Yeah.
So that was a massive thing, and something that I kind of kept reminding myself of daily. And you do have those days where there's the wobble and you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this?
Everyone does, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think as well, his approach to everything was like, he almost leads you in a way where you make the decision. So
that's a good
coach.
Saying,
yeah,
they don't tell you, and they bring you to realization. To
it. Yeah. So when we'll go through more the nutrition later, but in the plan, he gives you options of what your carbs are. He gives you options of what your meat are, and all the different
so you actually learn what you're getting from each protein or carbohydrate source. Yeah. Okay. Rather than like, eat this and don't ask questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you look at your menu for the day, for lunch and dinner, I basically have 9 variations of what I could eat.
Amazing.
And you do become absolute creature of habit, and that is me to a T. I eat the same thing for lunch and the same thing for dinner because of ease. And when
Most
you're
people do.
prepping
Yeah.
and doing everything else, it's easier just to bang out 3 portions and you know that that's lunch for a few days.
Yeah.
But it's about having the psychology of having choices that makes you feel like you're not restricting yourself unless you choose to restrict yourself by choosing to eat the same thing. So that was a massive part of it. And also when it came to things like alcohol, I remember saying to him, I feel mentally that I'm not being social. Like I'm feeling myself retracting the way I did last year.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. And I don't want to have those friendships and relationships break down. And so he was like, okay, well, why don't you have 2 glasses of wine, red wine, on a Saturday night? And I was like,
You were
oh,
like, stop the bus.
I can have wine. And then we worked out that I work better when it's a challenge or I have a goal that I need to reach. So we made a deal that on a Saturday, as long as I hit X amount of steps, I can have 2 glasses of wine and I have to do X amount of steps on a Sunday alongside training. And I was doing cardio anyway.
It's like making a
But
little
it
deal with
just,
yourself.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I knew if I was out walking on a Saturday afternoon and I was like, I don't want to do this, but the reward is that I get to go with my friends and go out for a drink in a bar and get dressed up and feel normal and feel part of everything.
Yeah.
And so it was just having that reward for yourself.
I mean, this kind of bodybuilding coach is making me think that maybe I could do it. Because I've always been like, I don't think I really want to give up wine or socializing would be my issue, because not socializing, but like downtime with friends.
Yeah.
They all love a wine.
It's hard. But then it got to a point where I was over having my wine. Like it got a few weeks like in and I was like, oh, like I don't feel like I need this anymore.
No.
And so I said to him, if I have the option, can I have more food and take away the wine?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, but I had to wait for you to ask me to remove alcohol, because if not, you're going to feel like I'm taking it away from you.
He was taking it away from you. That's so interesting.
So he lets you get to a point where you realize, would I rather keep smashing back 2 glasses of wine? And let's be honest, you always have 2 and you want more. Like 2 is that line where you're like,
at 2? Yeah.
It was tough.
Yeah.
So then it's like, is it easier to just not have it?
Not have any. Yeah.
But enjoy the other side of having more food. And we put into my plan fakeaways. So it was like homemade pizza, homemade tacos, and homemade burgers. So that I could have a weekend meal where me and Tom can cook dinner together and he wants to eat it, or me and my housemates can have dinner. And so it was ways that other people can be involved in my food plan.
I love
that. And it kept that social. Yeah.
Because that's so the next aspect I was going to ask about was environment. So how does your environment change during prep? Less eating out or going out, like anything else. But this coach sounds like a dream, because he's helped you, like enabled you, given you permission to include your friends and family and still a relatively like a few normal meals.
Yeah.
But in a way
it
that won't impact your health.
Yeah. And that made a massive difference. I think as well, being able to, like, having Tom on the journey with me as well has made me have to, like, on weekends not be fully selfish. On like I would just be going to the gym and then being like, I'm not doing anything, I'm going to hang out at home.
Alone. Yeah.
Whereas like having someone who's on the journey with you and they're like, let's go and do something fun. And so we made sure that on a weekend that we were doing something, even if it was just me getting my steps in. We take the dog and we go on an adventure.
Yeah.
And we try and make it a conscious thing of not just having days where we sat and did nothing.
Yeah.
And so it was forcing yourself where everything else is restricted. Like you can't eat out and no drinking and like you're not really wanting to go to all the parties and be the designated driver.
Yeah,
Um, but making sure that the time that you do have,
that's okay. You're still recording. It just doesn't like your video, does it? Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because that's what I think puts people off about starting any kind of health journey is the kind of perceived isolation, if that makes sense. Or like you're going to be, I actually just read an article about it, like you're going to be the weirdo. In today's, I had like 3 women message me and be like, "Oh, I'm so proud of myself. Like, I asked for no toast at Coffee Culture. Why have I never done that before?" And another lady who was like, "Oh, I asked for my chips to be taken off." Like, and people looked at me like a weirdo. And it's like, in this day and age, you have to be a weirdo. Like, to not eat shit. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And like, you wouldn't have been doing it if Jade hadn't, most likely. Megan, it's asking me to get you to refresh your browser again. I really want to screenshot the shot that it's saved on. It's so good. Okay. Sorry about Megan's technical issues. She's over at the Mountain Club shared office space in Queenstown, so I don't know what's going on with their internet 'cause it's usually amazing. Highly recommend that spot to anyone looking for a space to work and meet people in Queenstown, or even if you come down here for meetings and things. It's really, really cool. So now that we've covered off some of Megan's environment changes, I think she's about to be back. How exciting.
like,
So all those environment changes and how you affect the people around you or how you affect them. I think it's quite magical because the amount of people I see who like they do a plan and their husband loses weight by accident, or
mm,
like vice versa. It really does. I've got a 68-year-old client who's amazing, and his brother and sister-in-law have just like they've all lost about 13 kilos.
nice.
Yeah, it's very cool. But so you definitely whatever you're doing does kind of permeate
Mhm.
to the people around you, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Less eating out. Do you reckon you save money?
No, because bodybuilding's so expensive. I
Just
remember
all
last
goes on diamond bikinis.
Yeah, I remember last year everyone like, you must be saving so much money. I'm like, I just dropped $500 on protein powder and supplements. Like, no.
That is,
Um,
oh, I can't wait to get onto the nutrition. I feel like we need to leave loads of time for that because I'm intrigued
yeah.
about how how much you rely on protein powder and what's
Mm,
involved in it. So, the next point that I tend to run through with people as part of the program, one of my lifestyle design secrets, I call it, habits.
mm.
First
Habits
of
are
all,
key.
habits are key. So, and it's James Clear who says you don't, fall to the strength of your willpower.
Mm.
How you succeed, I'm really butchering this quote, but like how you succeed is by making things easier.
Yeah.
So, what habits did you have to put in place and what did you do to make it easier?
Um,
during prep versus normal time? And do you reckon some of the habits that you build during prep have stuck with you?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's almost like coming up with a routine that you
Yeah.
know that you can commit to and works for you day to day. And
Yeah.
just making sure that whatever that routine is fits around everything that you need it to fit around. So for me that means getting up at 5:30 to go to the gym because
Yeah.
I need to get it done in the morning where I've got that burst of energy first thing, and then I get on with my day as normal. And then
So just to clarify, you do tell everyone what you do for work because you do work
I do work.
as well. In case people were just thinking that Becca was a lady of leisure.
I wish. No, so I am sales and marketing manager for the Gibson Tavern and the GT Tasting Room, which
Which is
are,
amazing if you haven't been before.
yeah,
Highly recommend
they're
it.
based out in Gibston. And then I'm also doing freelance marketing as well now. So
Ground
getting
up
to find,
marketing on
yeah, ground
Instagram.
up marketing, that's me.
Awesome.
So yeah, keeping my fingers in all the pies because I'm not allowed any pie right now. So
I can't wait to get to reverse dieting or whether you're doing that or whether you're just going
mm,
straight to the next show as well. So many
yeah,
questions. Um, so yeah, habits are crucial in order to
yeah,
fit all your exercise and everything you need to do around a sort of semi full-time job and side
yeah.
hustle.
And so I think it's, yeah, working out how to fit everything in and just committing to it. Like
Do you write it down?
there's so much time in the day.
Yeah.
And I think when you think about how much time you spend just kind of sitting or like thinking that you're doing stuff, and I also think it's especially going to the gym. So I have about an hour and a half of weight training a day and then 45 minutes of cardio. And
What do you? How do you split that across the day? We're doing movement next, but so I'm intrigued.
I do it all in one go
Do you all
if
in
I
one go in the
can.
morning?
I
Yeah,
try and do it all in the morning, or I
and then
do a little bit of cardio and then I go back in the evening and do cardio. But I
Mhm.
actually use my cardio time to watch something on Netflix or
So good.
to catch up on emails or message friends at home. And it means I'm actively doing something whilst doing other things that I would be doing anyway, rather than just
Yeah,
going home and watching Netflix for an hour. Well, just go on the cross trainer, do an hour, and
and
you're
watch some
watching the same
Netflix.
show. So it's little things like that. And I also think when it comes to food, I think that creating habits in what you're eating, your body becomes so adjusts so well to kind of that repetitive action of what you're eating and how you're training. And so I think, yeah, having habits within your food of understanding the balance and even little things like just making sure things are prepped. Like if you're prepping pumpkin for one meal, just do 3 meals. And
Yeah,
then because everything's there and it's
yeah.
convenient, you've done one night of prep, but your food is sorted. And so you're less likely going to break the habits that you're setting. So it's just like preparation is key as well, I think, in everything.
You're
Like,
preaching to the choir.
massively.
You are, yeah. I absolutely love that you find that too because everyone's like, oh, I didn't, oh, I failed today. Or I had a bit of a fuck up. Went out for like, you know, went out to grab lunch because I didn't have it with me, and it's like
Mm,
it just the mental capacity it gives you if you've just prepped your meals and
yeah.
they're just there. You
I
don't have
think
to
as
think about
well,
them.
because if you're going out and grabbing something, it makes me feel more stressed because like it's not on plan. I don't know what the weights are, which obviously mine is quite an extreme compared to just
Yeah.
an average person trying to eat healthy. But
Yeah.
it takes away the stress of not knowing and not
Yeah.
knowing what's in it. And then just being able to not have to ever have that feeling of guilt, which
Yeah.
I think you shouldn't have a feeling of guilt with anything that you eat. Like, as long as you are mindful in what you're eating, just like you shouldn't be feeling guilty. But
Yeah.
naturally, I think those feelings do creep in when you then look back on your week and think, I've had a really healthy week, but I ate that curry or I ate whatever I ate. And so it limits those feelings as well, which then I think can still make you have a healthier relationship with what you're eating.
You've
Um,
done what you stuck to what you said you were going to do,
yeah.
and that's a really big kind of dopamine trigger.
Mm,
And you're removing the noise from yourself. Like if you've got meals prep, you don't have to go out to a cafe. You don't risk choosing something that might not potentially align with your goals, I
yeah.
guess.
And it'll save you money.
Saves you tons of money.
Mm.
Oh, I got a really awesome message the other day that like this lady like not buying lunch out. She's like, I'm saving so much money. And it's like you would, because like Scott, who I always throw under the bus, like when we came out of lockdown and
Mm.
he'd lost 7 kilos in lockdown just because I was just making his food and he just didn't bat an eyelid. As soon as he came out of lockdown, and he was like, oh yeah, he sang us pies. He'd just
Yeah.
go like a pie, a toasty, like just because if you are grabbing stuff without thinking, it's not
Mm.
necessarily the food that's out there is not going to be the best,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued. Onto your workouts before we get
Yeah.
onto the food. So the fourth aspect I usually write to people is movement.
Mm.
So how many steps did you do in a day? How did
Um,
what did your weightlifting look like? Heavy weights, light weights? I'm so intrigued.
so we do right now my program is 3 lower days and 2 upper days is kind of how we
Oh yeah.
split. But on the lower days,
For
I
everyone
will
who's listening that isn't like a bodybuilding aficionado, she's talking about her lower body,
yeah.
upper body. So like, for the lay person, what, like glutes and hammies?
Yeah.
So
And
her bum
quads.
and legs and
Yeah.
quads,
And
and
then
then
shoulders, back and arms.
shoulders, back, and arms.
But
Yeah.
we actually do on my leg days, I finish with shoulders. So I actually train upper body 5 days a week.
Oh
Even if it's
wow!
like
So
a little
just to
bit.
get some extra shoulder gains in there.
Yeah. So
I love our chats about shoulders.
I know. So basically, so my first 2 competitions, I went into the bikini category,
So
which
what does that mean for
typically
people who don't know? Yeah.
they want you to be sort of lean, little bit of muscle, um, nothing too defined. Um,
Really? So not too much muscle for the bikini
yeah.
category?
And so I went into those categories because I feel like my first coach kind of wrongly directed me and said that that's where I
Yeah.
should go. So I did.
Probably because you were so skinny at the time?
Yeah,
Was
but
that?
I've always had wide shoulders
Yes.
and a small waist. So
Yeah.
having that more X proportion,
Yeah.
which isn't really what they look for in bikini, they kind of just look for that kind of soft, kind of petiteness in a way, I think.
Yeah, hourglass, but not too extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas my waist can go pretty small when
Yeah, I've
I really
seen.
cut down. Um, so when I decided I was going to compete again this year, we agreed that I should move up and go into the figure or classic figure realm, which is wide shoulders, narrow waist, and then kind of wider bottom. So creating an X basically
Yeah.
in your physique. And so with that, we heavily intensified the upper body training to kind of
Hmm.
pack on the muscle up top. But I find that I naturally can put on quite a bit of muscle up top.
I remember us talking about this because when I did a bit of a food experiment a couple of years ago when I was doing F45, and I ended up with massive fucking shoulders.
Yeah,
They weren't massive, but like none of my dresses fitted.
yeah,
And so I think you can, especially when you get your nutrition right,
yeah.
you can put
It's
on muscle quite easily if you're doing the right training.
yeah. So it's the balance
Yeah.
between the two, I think. So we did a mini bulk. So I think I put on maybe like 5 or 6 kgs to bulk
Oh yeah.
up, and then
To gain that muscle.
yeah, and then we cut down, and I think by the time we got to stage last weekend, I'd went, I'd maybe dropped 11 or 12 kg from what I'd put on at the bulk.
Wow. So you put on
Um,
5 to 6 and then dropped
and
12.
then yeah,
Holy
um,
shit.
but yeah, I think
Do you
with
have any idea what your like body fat percentage was? If you got
No,
on
and we
stage, you
don't.
don't measure it.
No, I did last year, but we didn't bother this year because
What did you
ultimately,
get down to last year? Do you know?
I actually can't remember. It
Oh yeah,
wasn't too low. Like I
that's
think
good.
it's I mean, I won't speak too soon. We're going in for another show in October and the aim is to shred. Absolutely
Oh
shred everything else
God.
off. Um but yeah, so for this one in terms of like the gym training, it's mainly 4 or 5 key exercises per gym session. So I always
So
do two
it's not
days
too
on.
complicated.
No, the programs are pretty straightforward and it's been the same program for months. So it is that rinse and repeat, increasing the weight, but making
Yeah,
sure that your like RPE, so like your sort of performance and whatever you're doing doesn't drop as
yeah.
you
So you're
increase the
not
weight.
increasing the weight and doing fewer reps.
Yeah. So we're trying to keep
Yeah.
that balance.
Okay.
So and
Can I
typically I
just
would
say you're really going to be disappointing everyone here because everyone loves the like brand new 7 minute abs on Instagram, like the brand
no.
new workout that's going to fix everything. And it's like, actually, what wins the day? Like you said, it's a journey, not the destination as well. Or your coach
Yeah.
said, painfully boring repetition.
Yeah. But then I think it's like picking the competition, like in
Yeah,
yourself. So like I have key exercises like overhead shoulder press, pull ups, and leg press are
yeah,
3 things in myself that I compete with myself every week that I'm not allowed to do
that's
the
hilarious.
same weight, even if it's 1 kg heavier or point
Yeah,
0.5 or an extra rep. And so it's like you get competitive, like, and get yourself hyped up to go and do the same exercise you do every week, but you're trying to beat yourself. And so
I
it's
love
like
that. Yeah.
having that level of it keeps it exciting.
And for a layperson, for example, just wanting to get healthier, like you said, even at
Mm.
the weekend, you were trying to hit a step goal.
Yeah,
So even just trying to kind of beat yourself
yeah.
in that way could be really interesting.
And I think
It's
as
good for
well,
motivation.
it's I think the big thing that when I first started doing it, and especially this year when I was bulking, people were like, "Oh, you're going to get real manly." And it's like, I don't it's changing the stereotype of by weight training a female is going to get a man's physique, and that is just never going to happen. Like
No,
you
I'm really glad
can't.
you said that.
And like yeah, you can get wide shoulders, but find me a man who can get a waist as small as mine with wide shoulders. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
completely different body compositions, and so I think that that is the key thing in weight training, whether it is low weight and high reps, as long as you're
Yeah.
feeling the burn, then your body is working and doing what it has to
And the
do.
pump, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you go lower reps and higher weight and you should be feeling the same sort of levels of fatigue, but
Mm.
in no way is doing that going to give you a man's body if you're a female. And if you're a man,
No.
you're not going to get a female's body by weight training. And it's the the key thing I learned was in a lot of like magazines or like adverts and things, they talk about weight training when it's about men, like men who weight train and
Yeah.
lift. But then the language changes when it goes to females and they talk about get toned, get lean, and it's using those words.
Yeah.
But actually, the exercises that you're doing to get toned and lean is also the exercises that you're doing to
To build
get
muscle.
buffed and get muscle. And ultimately, by getting toned and lean, you are building muscle. But I feel like there's this stigma around it where if I'm talking about packing on muscle, people think, oh, it's going down that
What are
manly
you
route.
thinking?
But if
Yeah.
I said, no, I'm going to get super toned and super lean, then it's like, yeah, okay, that's a female's physique. So I think it's just changing that conversation around how people talk about weight training is massive.
It is, and it pains me because I get a lot of people they go, I just want to tone up. And I'm like, what you're actually saying scientifically is you want to lose the layer of fat that's hiding any muscle underneath.
Mm,
But of course, there has to be muscle underneath to
yeah.
create that toned look in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's a real like toning, like you say, just the way they phrase it in like
Yeah.
magazines is such a shit show and very misleading for people,
Mm-hmm.
I reckon.
Massively.
So on this topic,
Mm-hmm.
I meant to ask you this right at the beginning. So when people come to me and they tell me their body composition or their figure is genetic, there's nothing they can do about it. It's the way they were born. They've always had a belly and their mum had one too. Like, I get it. I certainly have inherited stuff from my parents, but what would you say, having been on the journey you've been on and transformed your body this many times, what would you say?
I think that there is a level of genetics that play in it,
Mhm.
in the fact that genetically, or I've been told, my shape of my wider shoulders and the way I'm able to pack muscle on up top is probably a little bit genetically.
Yeah,
That's just where it goes. Or when I'm cutting and we're trying to burn the fat, I lose the fat quicker on my back and my shoulders and my arms than I do on my legs, because you can't decide where fat loss comes
that's
from.
so interesting as well because when we were working together and you were
Mm,
slightly bigger before you started any of this health journey, I remember us talking about it because I pack weight on my boobs and my belly, whereas
yeah,
you would be way more than bottom half,
yeah,
right?
and
Naturally.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
think that when it comes to
So fat distribution can definitely be
be
genetic,
genetic,
I
yeah,
reckon. Yeah.
and the same way that I carry a lot of weight in my lower tummy, and I know that my mum does
Yeah.
too.
Me too.
But then I
I think
think,
that's a female thing.
yeah,
Anyway, yeah, sorry.
but then I think when it gets to a point of when you're training and focusing and driving to do something, you can kind of throw genetics out the window, because as long as you're willing to be working super hard, and if you know that you have a problem area and you can work more on that problem area, then you will see the changes. And my coach told me this year, so I got a six pack for the first time in my life,
Woohoo!
and he was like, your abs are definitely genetics. He was like, you've got such nicely shaped abs. And I was like, no one in my family has ever even seen an ab. Like,
Yeah,
we're,
they've probably never seen their
no offense,
abs.
mum and dad,
Yeah.
but like, they're not the sort of fit physical kind of
Yeah.
body type.
Well, you
But
only get to
they're
see your
all
abs by losing a certain amount of body fat, don't you?
exactly. So then I think when people argue that it is just genetics, if you're looking at your mum and dad and thinking, well, I can't change because that's how they are, but if
Yeah.
they went on the same journey as you, then would they have that kind of physique? You
And
know?
actually, you say that, your ability to put on muscles on your shoulders is
Mm.
lightly genetic or your abs, but had you not been in the gym doing pull-ups and shoulder presses for the
And
last
I'd
three
never
to
know.
six months, would you know that you have
Yeah,
the ability to put muscle on your shoulders? You wouldn't have a clue.
no. So I
So it's
think,
also the what's it called? Like the kind of the forces that you apply to your
yeah,
body make a big difference, and also the nutrition, which I can't wait to get.
yeah. I think that's the thing. If everyone in my family was doing my training program and following the same thing I was and doing the same process, would we all end up with the same physique? Who knows? But I think people tie genetics to it because it's easier to compare yourself to like your parents and what is in front of you.
It's
But
easier to outsource the power,
yeah,
if that makes sense. It's
yeah,
it's it's a lot more comfortable to believe that you don't have the power to change what you want
yes,
to. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Um, Whereas, yeah, once you start making the changes and you really hammer into what it is you're trying to do, then yeah, you might discover that genetically you do pack on glutes and you're going to have the peachiest bum ever, because
I
that's where all
cannot
your
wait to
muscle
share
goes.
like some photos of like
Yeah.
Megan's incredible ass in a sequin bikini, little miss. Oh, I just genetically pile the fat on my lower half. I
Yeah.
think that's what I love about bodybuilding is like no matter what your genetics are, it's
Mm,
such an extreme form of general life. So the change that people can make in general life just amplified.
yeah.
Like
Insanely.
insanely, and it's like such a little like it's like a little lab of like what changes you can make to your body when you really manipulate the inputs and the
Yeah.
outputs.
And like even today, so we've slightly changed my workout program just because I'm going into a new block of 8 weeks. So to keep it exciting, I've been on the same program since January or February. So just to give it a bit of a revamp, we're just shaking up some of the exercises. And my coach is like, sweet, we're going to just add in some calves. Like, let's just start building your calves because why not, kind of thing. And it'll give you a
Yeah.
nicer shape and whatever. And it's like when you start pinpointing the places that need work and then it becomes the repetition of hammering that part of your body and making sure there's enough rest in between as well. But it is ultimately what your coach and you do is sit down, look at a check in photo, and work out where do I need to build and what do I need to focus on. And that's what
Yeah.
you go and do. And you just actively go and over months build it. Like it doesn't just appear.
Literally build it.
Yeah. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So I think we should trust us. An hour and 5 minutes already.
Oh
Oops.
God.
Sorry. um, sorry, Megan, and sorry, listeners. Um, Nutrition.
Mm.
Tell me everything. First of all, so how important do you? I've got so many questions. Like, what do you understand about nutrition that you didn't previously? The difference meat has made, and how you change your nutrition from, say, a bulking phase to a cut.
So going from the main differences, I'd say being on a meat diet this time is that I was able to bulk. I was able to put on quite a lot of muscle mass. I'd never done a
And just
bulk.
to clarify, you put on muscle mass, not necessarily lots of fat.
Oh,
To clarify for people.
I was eating super clean. And
Yeah,
so there wasn't tons of fat in my diet. It was putting
yeah,
on muscle.
yeah,
But before my first show, because I'd just been on this massive weight loss journey, I didn't do a bulk. I didn't try and bulk up on muscle. I basically
yeah,
then just went into a bigger cut.
yeah,
So there wasn't tons of muscle under there, but then between show one and show two, I did manage to actually pack on quite a bit of muscle.
yeah.
And then when we actively went into a bulk, um, like the calories weren't super high. Like it wasn't insane.
And this is really
Um,
good for people to hear because you were obviously doing the workouts and you were gaining muscle, but
yeah,
without aiming to gain a lot of body fat at the same time.
yeah.
It's kind of
And
crucial.
so I looked way fuller than
Yeah,
what I did before because obviously I was putting it on. Um, but I did find that it was easier to bulk up with meat. And when we've got into the cut and you get to quite low calories, being on a meat diet has helped like sustain you
does it help
longer.
keep you fuller? Yeah,
Yes. So because I feel like when I
yes,
was on a vegan diet, I would eat and within an hour I'd be like, okay, counting down to my next meal.
yeah.
Whereas now we've worked.
It just loves freeze framing you on like the best faces. Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. Megan, sorry, it's asking me to refresh you again. This internet browser hates us, doesn't it? I'll have to have a go at cutting some of these out. I might actually have to do some editing on this podcast. So just while we wait for Megan to come back, I think she made a really, really interesting point there that as soon as she started eating meat, she was not only able to gain more muscle, that actually makes you look more toned, but she was also able to she found eating less calories easier because of how filling it was, which I think is really fascinating. So That's definitely something to take into daily life. Oh, you're back.
I'm back.
Yay. So you were just talking about snacks.
Yeah. So we
So
used
were you
to
doing kind of meal snack, lunch snack, dinner?
so when I'm on low days,
Yeah.
which I'm back on right now, so post show we're back into the cut.
Yeah.
Um I
And
have
just to clarify for people, so bulking is the period during which you build up your muscle mass and your calories are slightly higher.
yeah,
Cutting is when you are cutting body fat,
yeah, to then try and
essentially.
retain and show off the muscle that you've built
Yeah.
underneath. Um and so when I'm cutting, I have, for example, before I work out in the morning, I have my oats, my protein oats with some fruit, and that's at like 5:30 in the morning. And
Yeah.
then
You
so
do that
that
before you work out.
yeah, because if
Yeah.
not,
Interesting.
I'm going in for like a 2 hour, 2.5 hour session on an empty stomach.
Oh
Like
God. Yeah, no, you wouldn't want to do that.
it's like trying to drive 10 kilometers when you've only got 3 kilometers of fuel in the tank. Like
Yeah.
you kind of
When
got to
you're
have a
already
bit
at a
of
really
fuel.
low body fat.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then we worked out, I was leaving the gym starving and I wasn't meant to have anything until lunch. But we've worked out that I need that like mid morning something to
Yeah.
get me through. So I literally just have like a serve of protein, so like some meat and some salad, greens and green beans. So it's
Yeah.
a super
What's your go-to
low
meat at the
calorie
moment?
meal. Oh, just venison. Every
How
meal.
good. How
Um
good.
So so I have that in the morning. Then I have my lunch. Afternoon I'll have a protein shake. Then I have dinner, and then before bed I have a piece of fruit. So like a dessert
Oh yeah.
thing. So really I'm
Yeah.
eating every 3 to 4 hours. We try not go over 3 to 4 hours without having a serve of protein. Is kind of how
Because
it
the
works throughout the day.
idea behind that being to keep the amino acids in your muscles so that you don't catabolize them.
Sure. I don't know, I just did what I'm told.
I love that. For everyone listening who I just totally lost, that's you generally do that when you're bodybuilding because you've worked so hard to gain all this muscle.
Yeah,
And
you
what
don't
you
want to
don't
eat
want
it.
on a very low calorie diet, you don't want when your body fat stores are so low. I want to clarify with people, your body will always try and if you're fat adapted, it will burn your body fat before it starts catabolizing your muscle. And when you get to very, very low stages of body fat, like you can see, Megan, I feel like you should give us a wee flex on camera. So Megan has not got much muscle, not got much fat, sorry.
We're
Not
looking
got
pretty
much
small.
fat at all. You're tiny muscles. So you're outdoing me. And so when you get to that stage of low body fat, your body can start to eat. It sounds really bad, but start breaking down your muscles for
Mm.
energy, which you don't want if you're bodybuilding because you want to keep
Yeah.
as much of that as possible.
Yeah. So yeah, we worked out that that was kind of the rhythm that I need to be in to sustain me throughout the day.
Yeah, perfect. And so
Um,
what are your macros? What are your macronutrients at the
I'm
moment?
gonna check. I actually don't know. Again, I just follow the program.
I
Um,
reckon your carbohydrates would be a hell of a lot more than I would
so we
recommend for
do.
normal people losing fat.
Yeah. So like last week, peak week, which previously on peak week we do water loading, dehydrating. It's not good on your
Yeah.
body. But my coach actually doesn't believe in that. We keep everything consistent. So we didn't water load. I was staying on 3.5 liters of water a day. Even on show day, everybody else is
Last time you were on
dehydrated.
8.
Yeah, so last time I started on 8 and then you go 7, 6, 5, 4 and like counting down to the show. And the day before my last show, I was on 500 mils of water, which is
Oh,
nothing. And
yeah.
when you're used to drinking quite a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and my coach this year doesn't believe in that process. It's dehydration is more for athletes who have taken steroids, like, and you can manipulate the body a lot more. But for a
Yeah.
natural competitor, dehydration, from what he's told me, will only factor maybe 2%, You might get 2%
Yeah.
better. But are you willing to risk it and put your health through that for 2%? So
Yeah.
we kept the water the same, and we increased my carbs insanely. Like
In
I
the
ate,
last week.
yeah, last
Was
week
that because I saw you? Was it last week or the week before? And you said you had to eat like half a pumpkin for dinner.
600 grams of pumpkin for dinner, 200 grams of pumpkin for 200 grams of rice for lunch.
And this is to like fill you up with water again,
Mm.
right?
So it's basically to then when
Fill your
you
muscle
pump up
bellies.
and you're in the gym, you
Yeah.
want your muscles to be hydrated, but
Yeah.
and then or he keeps them hydrated and then basically fills you out with carbs. And so on show day, you're literally backstage eating lollies and like getting the sugar pump and the carbs from
Oh my
sugar. And then you're
gosh.
like pumping all your muscles up. And then because you've loaded so much carbs into them in the week, the idea is that it will
They
then
just like
fill them
balloon.
out. Yeah.
This is hilarious because this is one of the first conversations I have with clients, and I'm like, once you eliminate most of the grains and sugar and processed food from your diet, you'll drop a few kilos because your body's holding so much water. Whereas you guys
No,
do like
I
almost the opposite at the end,
yeah, I
to
think
like
as
regain
well,
it.
even throughout the whole process, I'm still on carbs. I still like, and I
Yeah,
think that's the thing is people think if they cut out, if they do a no fat diet or a no carb diet, like it will be fine. And I actually think the healthiest diet is just a balanced one
yeah,
because in as long as your percentage of fat against carbs and protein is all at the right macros,
yeah,
then you'll be balanced.
yeah.
And I think the key thing is choosing the right carbs, like things like kumara, pumpkin, and rice are good carbs
Mm,
because they will keep you full, but they're low calories. So eating a
yeah,
600-gram serve of pumpkin is the same as eating 200 grams of rice. And if you look at the
yeah.
portion size of that on a plate, and because you're a visual eater first, so you look at a plate, and if it's a small portion, you're going to think,
You
I'm
eat
going to
with
be
your
hungry
eyes,
after
right?
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
But if I've got 600 grams of pumpkin filling half of my plate, then I've got my veg, which I'm allowed unlimited veg throughout the day. So if I'm hungry, I could literally snack on some broccoli or make a mini salad. Like I can
so
eat
good.
non-starched veg to my
Yeah,
heart's content. Um, so you've got all this pumpkin, your meat, and your veg, and it is a humongous plate. Even to the point Tom has been like, I can't eat that. Like that is too much food.
yeah,
But the actual amount of food that's there when it's in your macros is still in a calorie. Like you've got that meal twice a day, plus a couple of protein shakes, plus 75 grams of oats and peanut butter, and your calories are 1,700 for the amount of
yeah.
food that
That's
you're
so
eating.
interesting, isn't it?
So it's just being
That's
smart on where you
yeah,
distribute it.
it's being really smart and like I suppose to give you a bit of a background because you don't even really know like what I work through with clients.
Mm.
We haven't really spoken about it ever.
No.
So when people first come to me, so you're talking about balancing macronutrients and carbs definitely not being bad. When most people come to me, they're eating the equivalent of like 35 to 45 teaspoons of sugar equivalent worth of carbohydrates a day. And
Wow.
yeah, so like I don't know what it is in macros, but like up 200 plus grams of carbohydrates, and they're not doing what you're doing. So they maybe doing 3,000 steps a day,
Yeah.
maybe like not lifting anything, and what that does on if you do that on repeat every day is it's having to be processed by the liver and then stored as body fat,
Yeah.
which is what people are struggling with. So I think that's really good advice on like if you're moving as much as Megan, guys, and yeah, you just pointed out some really, really good carbohydrate sources.
I think a
Like they're
massive,
all like really natural. It's not
yeah,
like going out and smashing a pizza or
there
lots
is,
of
I do think as well, it's down, like a lot of people actually undereat. And that's
yeah,
one of the first things I learned when I was starting off trying to lose weight was that my body kept plateauing, but it's
yeah,
because I was massively under eating. And I know I undereat now. Well, I'm cutting, but it's in like a sort of controlled way.
Like an intentional way.
Yeah. But a lot of people day to day, if they're not training, like I'll be chatting to someone in the office and I'll say, "Oh, what have you got for lunch?" And they're like, "Oh, I've just got crackers and an egg." And I'm like, "But
Yeah.
that's not going to sustain you." And they're like, "Oh, but I'm doing a diet." So then I'll have an apple and then I'll have like all these little bits that equate to nothing. So your body is ultimately starving, in which
Yeah.
case it's going to hold on to every bit of fat it can because it's in shock and it thinks that it's going to starve. But if
Yeah.
and so I say to them, honestly, eat 200 grams of rice for your lunch and 150 grams of rice for your dinner with every meal, and you'll
Oh,
be
that's
so much
really
more.
that's we're gonna have to disagree on that because I have to pull so many people off rice. Not off
No,
rice, but with rice, sandwiches,
bread,
sushi, pasta,
yeah, like bread,
when they
carbs,
pile all that on together.
anything that's processed, I don't have.
Yeah,
So like
that's really interesting.
I can have quinoa, rice, pumpkin, and kumara are the main carbs source that I
Yeah,
would
so
use.
what I have to come like when most people come to me, they're stacking some form of processed cereal or toast with, like you say, like crackers
Mm,
and an apple or something like quite odd, some form of bread or processed lunch, and then more carbs in the form of snacks in the afternoon, but like not the good kind.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then more in the evening. So it's really interesting, and I find everyone severely undereats protein.
Mm, yeah. I
Yeah.
think
You reckon
people,
you were back in the day?
yeah, probably. And I think
Yeah.
it's more as well about being able to, like I said, like I think if it's in the right macros. So like I just checked. So I've got
Oh yeah. Tell me.
currently, which I'm in a cut. So 145 grams of protein, 147 grams of carbs, and 20 grams of fat a day.
Interesting. So your fat's really low at the moment for the
Yeah.
cutting.
But then we
Yeah.
do, I feel I'm just rambling on now. On once
No,
a week,
that's all right. We'll do one more question at the end. But yeah, carry on.
once a week I get a refeed. So
Oh
basically
yeah.
that's where we go from being on a low calorie day to a higher calorie day. And on that day I get extra carbs and way more extra fat. And so that is a way of like when you're in the cut, like not suggesting that people just eat low calorie during the week and then have a binge on a weekend. It's still very clean and
You're doing
very
this in a very
controlled.
controlled environment, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we would be low during the week. And then by having that higher calorie day and making sure you train on the day that you're having the high calories and train the day after, you're using the energy. And it also stops your body thinking that
It
it,
just
it,
down
it,
regulating.
it makes it think that it's going to get more food again.
Yeah.
And so it will continue the cut. Whereas if
Yeah.
you're just on low constantly, you're just not going to lose anything. So it's like
Yeah.
knowing when your body needs to be fed, when it needs to be recovered, and when you feel like you need to enter a recovery phase, you need to feed your body more.
That's actually fascinating because I think that's what I not accidentally do quite knowingly.
Yeah.
But like bodybuilder theory, but eat really quite well during the week, relatively low
Mm.
calorie, and then at the weekend just not really bloody worry that much,
Yeah.
within reason. And so it does having I definitely eat a lot more calories at the weekend, but almost like you say, like with intention,
Yeah.
and still do a workout on Saturday and movement and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, because I think keeping your calories really, really, really like painfully low for too long just isn't good for you,
No.
especially really low
That is
fat.
not fun. Who enjoys
It's
that?
not fun.
I mean, coming from me, who's sitting here being like, I'm on a cut. It
I'm
is
on the
fun,
gut.
but it's way more fun when you have more.
I can't believe how actually sensible we've been on this podcast so
I
far. We might
know.
have to do like a Megan non-prep podcast
Yeah.
some other time. So moving on, because we kept people for, oh my God, an hour and 23 minutes.
Oh my God.
Um, what aspects of bodybuilding, this is your takeaway dessert, guys. What aspects of bodybuilding do you reckon people can and should take into daily life?
Preparation of food. I think that
Yeah.
should be in there. I think that's something that everybody can do every day. Setting yourself goals. And I think ultimately for bodybuilding, the goal is show day. So just set
Yeah.
yourself a goal further down the line, and that is what you're working towards. And I also think more people should just wear sparkly bikinis on the daily. Why
Just every
not?
day.
Yeah.
Have you ever cracked one out in Queenstown?
No.
I dare you to. Like I
We need a
brought
festival or something.
yeah, we do. I remember although you'd want to be in some form of really amazing cutting phase, because I don't think I would want
No.
to see myself in a sparkly bikini right now.
I know, I keep joking to Tom, I think we're gonna go on holiday in December somewhere, and I'm like, yeah, I'll pack the
Amazing.
bikini, and it's just gonna be like all these glitter rays coming off it.
It would be
But
so cool.
yeah,
But it's funny, like I'm really impressed that you're doing this and in New Zealand. And I think it probably is maybe a friendlier place to do it than the rest of the world. But like your sparkly bikini, I want you to crack it out as much as possible because when I was in Europe last year, as you do, I just got back from Aussie and I've done it again. I was in Barcelona and bought a leopard print bikini that's like pretty much a thong, and I was like, bloody love it, because women over there are like so confident, don't give two shits about their body composition or whether they look toned
yeah.
or not. They just absolutely rock it. And like, my God, Scott's eyes were like bursting out of his head on Barcelona Beach because there was just like these straps everywhere and like he didn't have a clue what was going on. And then in Aussie last week, I admit, it's really embarrassing. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I totally got Barbie fever and found this bright pink one.
Funny.
So I'm all about the leopard print, bright
Yeah.
pink, sparkles, glitter. You do
Yeah.
turn a few heads in New Zealand though.
Yeah, I think so as well. But I think, yeah, I'm all here for the glam as well. Which is funny because day to day you see me in the gym and I'm like lucky if I've brushed my hair.
Yeah. Well,
And
look at us. We're like bloody Jeff Bezos in activewear.
yeah. And
Like in our
then
black. So dull.
on show day you got
It's
50
all
layers of
on.
tan, sparkle, everything, and yeah, unrecognizable on show day really. But it's great.
Yeah.
I think I love
I'm
that
gonna
part
have
of
to get
it.
you to send me some photos of you
Yeah.
after this. Because I
Yeah.
got I have to put it on the podcast cover. So prepping your meals, having a goal. And I think what your coach said about progress, not
Oh,
perfection,
yeah, is
is
massive.
really important.
Mm. Yeah, I'd
Really,
say that
really
that's
important.
the main things is yeah, the mindset, the goal, and being prepared in any way to get yourself there.
Mindset.
Yeah.
It's all bloody
So,
mindset, isn't
so yeah, chop that pumpkin.
it? Chop that pumpkin, everyone. Chop that pumpkin.
Yeah.
Um, Eat that venison.
Yeah.
One final question for you, Megan. Have you
Yeah.
been out hunting yet?
No. And I still won't. So, because I was like, oh, I'm vegan because I don't want to hunt and kill the animals myself. But now I'm with someone who does that for me and I know exactly where it's come from. It makes me feel better about it.
It's incredible, isn't it? Yeah, actually, we're so lucky to live in this part of the world
Mm,
and have boys or men, although I must give Scott a bit of a prod to actually go hunting, who can, yeah, bring
yeah,
home
because
the bacon
the
or
bacon,
the venison,
literally.
literally, and we know where it's come from.
Yeah, he did just sign me up to there's a shooting. So I got the shooting range, but I don't go hunting. Anyway, there's
Yeah.
a shooting competition in Gibston at the end of September, and he's just signed me up for that. And I'm like,
Oh
that's a
my
different kind
goodness.
of guns. Like, I don't know if that's my kind of guns, but
That is the most Kiwi thing I think I've ever heard.
yeah. So I'm going, it's actually 2 weeks, 3 weeks
You're going from
before my next,
sparkly bikinis to a gun chasing competition.
yeah, 3 weeks before my next show, when I'm going to be in the thick of a cut. I'm going up a mountain to shoot guns. I don't
Wow.
know what I'm doing. Maybe
That sounds so
I'll
funny.
wear the bikini there.
Wear the
I'll put everybody
bikini.
else off with all the sparkle and I'll win.
Oh, what you will. You actually will. You won't be able to shoot straight. And on that note, before we go any further off topic,
Yeah.
Megan, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for
Hope
having me.
everyone has enjoyed it.
Mm.
Cheers, guys. See you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Lifestyle Design Secrets podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please do stop and take 2 seconds to subscribe and leave us a review. It means the world to us. If you are curious about working with us or checking out our new bite-sized guides or our full body reset transformation programs, please do head on over to our website, which is www.amysfitnessandnutrition.co.nz. Have a great day.